Who am I?
Richard Casimir, media veteran.
Why I got in radio is because I'm good with a knife.
Contributor in Perth, Australia.
Our friend Richard Casimir in the United States.
How are you guys enjoying the 19th century? Is that working out for you? How can you say, I'm not making fun of you as a race, I'm making fun of you as black performers?
I think as a country, Americans are as patriotic as the most rabid UK football hooligan.
Who am I?
Richard S. Casimir. G'day, Rich.
Good morning, brother. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Yourself?
Good. How was your vacation? Rehab went all right? Nicole was there when you came out?
I didn't have rehab, mate. I just went and did another shift.
I'm sorry I missed you.
You would have been asleep, I would imagine, about that time, so that's okay.
I'm asleep even when I'm upright.
You too. I'm glad to know I'm in good company. Glad to know I'm in good company.
The world of naivete, that's what Australia should be labeled as, at least some of your callers. Come on.
Keep going, mate. Keep going. You're setting yourself up. Setting yourself up to get shot here.
Country, for example, when the U.S. or any country goes into another country and drops a bomb or takes some despot out, that's why that country is called a superpower. Yes, they can get away with it until somebody else holds them accountable. I didn't approve of Somalia being attacked. I didn't approve of Hussein being hanged. This broad brush about the U.S. does this and the U.S. does that is baloney. For example, here's a recent poll from CNN. And the poll goes, regardless of how you feel about the war in general, do you favor or oppose President Bush sending 20,000 more troops into Iraq to attempt to stabilize the situation? Those people polled in favor, 32%. Those Americans opposed to it, 66%. That's where the U.S. stands. The U.S. doesn't agree at all with what Bush is doing. The direction of the country. People think that we're going in the right direction, 28%. Wrong, 67%. President Bush's job rating, 32% approve, 65% disapprove. That's the true barometer of how we feel about this president. Right?
You see, here's the big key, and of course, one of the great advantages he has is that he doesn't have to face another election because he can't. He finishes up his second term. And I suppose, look, this becomes a dilemma in this country as much as it does in yours. And I mean, go and pick your country that has the same sort of similar style elections that we have, and you get the same dilemma. The big question is going to be, is the next president, regardless of what colours he wears, going to be any better? I mean, for some people, the answer will be yes. For other people, it will possibly be no.
But who knows that? We believe what that person says when they campaign.
Yeah, but you see, what happens?
Take them at their word.
What happens? I don't know what the situation is in the US, but what happens here? People know, regardless of who wins the next election in this country, that they will be told porkies during the election campaign. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it is. That is a given. And I don't know if that level of cynicism exists in the US, but that's how it is here. People will automatically accept, no matter what, they're being fed a bunch of porkies.
We're probably the most cynical people on the planet. When you look at the ratio of how many people vote as opposed to who makes a difference, how many people actually watch the news. There's been a growing trend of apathy in this country. In the past couple of elections, though, we've seen a higher voter turnout, which is a positive sign than in years past. I'd like to ask you, though, you being the genius.
I'm not a genius, mate. Don't ever paint me out to be a genius, because I can assure you, genius I ain't.
Professional to professional. And I'd like to present this to your listeners. How are you viewing the fact that John Howard has been in lockstep with George Bush? We know that everything that George Bush has done in his presidency has been absolutely wrong, particularly with this war in Iraq. And John Howard has been in lockstep with him. So how does John Howard account for that when he runs again? How do the voters feel about that?
Well, I mean, ultimately that will be tested later this year at a federal election. The opinion polls...
But is there nothing in the news? Are there no polls? What do your listeners say?
What you don't understand, Richard, is that when you talk about this lockstep, that's basically only in terms of Iraq. In terms of anything else, certainly nothing obvious here. I mean, it's pretty obvious that he's pretty cozy with Bush. That's pretty obvious. And there are people who've been fairly vocal in their criticism of that. But you see, this is what I talked about before. And I don't know. I would imagine that a lot of this rings true in your country. One of the great differences between our involvement in Iraq and the US involvement in Iraq is the number of body bags coming back on military transports.
Sure.
And I talked about this at the very, very beginning, that even at the beginning when it certainly appeared, whether that was accurate or not, I don't know, but if we assume for our discussion at this juncture that there was a degree of accuracy, that people were united in the need to go to war, there certainly was support here for the involvement in Afghanistan. There was not support for involvement in Iraq. That notwithstanding, Howard has won elections since, as has Bush. The other key is we just haven't had the body bags coming home, and there is nothing like body bags coming home to turn public opinion. That, in my view, has been one of the most significant things to happen in the United States.
Absolutely.
Young men coming home in body bags, and it's being served up for people at 6 o'clock at night with their tea as they're watching the news. And what happens is people just start to get a little bit disgusted, and they then turn around and say, why are we doing this? I suppose it's like the 21st century's Vietnam, if you want to put it that way. But whatever happens, ultimately, there are two things that will happen here. Whether people put Howard in for another term or whether they vote for Kevin Rudd will be determined by which one they dislike the least, and also which one they believe is going to have the best impact for them. Domestic issues, I can assure you, domestic issues will dominate the federal election campaign, and people ultimately will vote on domestic issues. That is, I think, also the case in the United States. The only caveat there is there are a lot of people from all over the United States who have family members who are being injured and killed in Iraq. And that sort of thing tends to have far-reaching, because one person killed probably affects 100 people back home. That's a lot of people to affect.
We actually reached a milestone a few weeks ago where there have been more soldiers killed in Iraq than were killed in 9/11, Twin Towers, and the Pentagon disasters. That having been said, that Iraq had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. That's a cruel irony there. And yet Bush has sold us bill of goods that Iraq had something to do with 9/11. He's admitted that it had nothing to do with it. It's been proven there were no WMDs. It just keeps going. For someone as cynical and as morbid as I am, it's fun to watch over here. Unfortunately, as you say, there are people coming home in body bags. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but the State Department has banned any showing of caskets being unloaded from planes of dead soldiers. We can't see that. We haven't seen that for over a year. They absolutely refuse. You cannot have cameras showing dead soldiers coming back to the United States. So we don't see that every night as a way of covering up what's actually going on.
But it still doesn't alter the fact that people report it's happening.
No, and the other...
See, the whole point is it doesn't matter. And what happens, and this is what people don't realise, by taking an action like that, what happens is immediately it sets people's minds where they go, this problem is far worse. That's what happened.
The other strange thing is that this past weekend, Bush on national television said that regardless of the Congress and the Senate, he can do whatever he wants to send more troops or do whatever he wants to continue this war in Iraq. This man is totally out of control.
Well, I think what will happen is he'll pull it up a long time before impeachment gets there, because I don't think he'd want to be impeached.
I don't think he thinks.
I don't think he can hold that against him, because I think he was born thick. And I think that part of the problem is all the advisors and all the hangers-on. That's part of the problem. See, I still think that in the US, one of the person who's now no longer part of the administration has a hell of a lot to answer for is Donald Rumsfeld.
He's gone. He's no longer a player. He's gone.
Mate, I think he should be held accountable for a lot of what he did. I mean, there is no doubt that that guy went absolutely ballistic, and there was also no doubt that a lot of things were done under his direction and in pursuit of his agenda. I think Donald Rumsfeld has got a hell of a lot to answer for and should be brought to account for it, because what he's done is he's cost literally thousands of US lives. He's cost God knows how many billions of US taxpayers' dollars, and he never listened to any of his senior advisors in the very beginning.